In this lesson, we'll learn how we can construct advanced shapes using Illustrator's Pathfinder panel. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we learned how to use Illustrator's Shape Builder tool to combine shapes and subtract shapes from other shapes. Now, the Shape Builder tool was actually a new tool added to Illustrator CS5 to help you combine and subtract shapes, but really there's a lot of other options inside Illustrator for ways that we can combine shapes to make new shapes. Let me go ahead and show you where we can manage all these effects and these shape changes from. Let's go ahead and come up to our window drop-down menu and let's open our Pathfinder panel. Now you can see here the keyboard shortcut for that is Shift-Control-F9, and here we go. We've got our Pathfinder panel. Now, if this is your first time seeing the Pathfinder panel, it may look a little bit intimidating because there's a lot of different buttons here and a lot of different options, and you know, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to master using this panel to get exactly the result you want to get. So don't be discouraged by this. I'm just going to walk you through some of these options and some of these settings here, and we're going to just check out what each one of these does. So I tell you what, let's take a look here. We've got the Pathfinder panels divided into two areas really. We've got shape modes and we've got pathfinders. Now, the difference between the two is that pathfinders are really effects that can be actually applied to an object, while the shape modes, if we just select an object and click one of these shape mode buttons, that's a permanent change that we're actually making to an object. So we're actually going to talk about effects more in an upcoming lesson. So I tell you what, let's just zoom in here and take a look at some of these basic shapes on our artboard here. And I've got just some basic geometric shapes, and let's just explore some of these shape modes to begin with here. Now I'm going to go ahead and take here these two rectangles and just layer them on top of each other here. I'm going to go ahead and select both those, and this first option here is the unite function. Now there's a little preview there. It looks like we're merging two shapes, and that's exactly what this option is going to do. We can actually merge those two shapes together by clicking that button. Now notice the new shape takes on the color of the topmost shape, so that's important to remember. It's also important to remember that once you've merged two shapes, unless you hit your undo button, there's no going back to the original two shapes. We've created a new shape and those two old shapes are gone. So you know what, let's just go ahead and undo that now, because I want to go ahead and show you the next option here, and this is called the minus front option, and there's a really nice little preview of what that's going to do right there. We're actually going to subtract the topmost object here from the object behind it with both these objects selected. So let me just click that here, and you can see we just basically punched one of these rectangles through the other one, and we've got our new shape here. Alright, so those first two options are actually pretty easy to understand. The next option and the third one over is called the intersect command, and let me just undo that here. So we have our two rectangles back. Now the intersect command is a little trickier. So basically what the intersect command is going to do is it's going to take these two shapes and leave us a new shape only where these two shapes are overlapping. So let me go ahead and just activate that here on these two rectangles, and you can see what we're left with is this shape here in the middle where they were overlapping. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo that here, and let's see what happens if we bring in a third shape into the mix. Let's go ahead and just reposition these to where we have three shapes overlapping. So we'll just go ahead and drag a marquee selection around all three of those shapes, and we'll go ahead and again intersect those here. And you can see again what we're left with is the little bit of shape where all three shapes overlapped. So this is a little bit different command, but this is exactly what the intersect function does. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and move on over and check out this fourth button here. This is the exclude button, and let's just go ahead and look at this with two shapes to begin with here. Now the exclude button is probably the hardest of the four to understand, because what the exclude is going to do is it's going to take a look at both these two shapes, and it's actually going to remove the areas where they overlap and leave us with the areas where they don't overlap. So let me just show you what that looks like here with two shapes. And you can see here what we're left with is a group if we look up here in our control panel, and if we were to ungroup this with a Control-Shift-G, this is a permanent change. We're left with two new shapes here, both with a corner taken out of them. So you can see here what the exclude option does on two shapes. Let's go ahead and check out what it does to three shapes. I'm going to go ahead and undo back a couple times, and we've got both our rectangles back here. Let's go ahead and drag in this third rectangle here and just see what it does when we bring in a third shape to the mix. I'll just go ahead and draw a marquee selection around our shapes here, and let's go ahead and again exclude those. Now this is something very different than what we just looked at. So let's just kind of examine this and see what happened here. Now, again, the areas that were overlapping have been knocked out, but the areas where only two shapes overlap have been knocked out. So what's really important for you to remember about the exclude function is that when an even number of shapes overlap, it's going to remove that area. Where an odd number of shapes overlap, like right here, there was 3, it's going to actually leave that area alone. Now, it also applies, again, the color of the topmost object to the new shape. So again, this is a group, so if we ungroup the shapes, we'll be able to pull these apart and see that this is a permanent change. And what we're left with here is 4 new shapes that were grouped together. Alright, so let me go ahead and undo that so we have our original rectangles back. There we go. Now, you may notice here that the expand button is grayed out. Now, I promise we're going to talk about the expand button, but we're going to do that here in about 2 lessons when we address another feature of Illustrator. But I want to go ahead and just touch on some of these pathfinders down below. Now, I mentioned that the pathfinders are effects that can be applied to an object or a group of objects. And really, the pathfinders can be accessed in 2 different locations. We can access them through the Pathfinder panel here. The reason why they're here is because these are functions that are very similar to the shape modes in the way they operate, but there's actually more pathfinders than just these. We can actually access these through the Effects menu under Effects and Pathfinders, and you can see there's several more here. Now, what's the difference between accessing them as an effect versus accessing them in the Pathfinders panel? Well, if we were to apply a Pathfinder through the Effects menu, it can only be applied to groups, layers, and other text objects. So if we apply a Pathfinder through the Pathfinder panel, on the other hand, we can actually apply that to any combination of objects, or groups, or even layers. So really, there's a couple of different targets for the Pathfinder effect based on where we choose that effect from. Now, I tell you what, let me just go in here and check out a couple of these different ones here. We've got divide, trim, merge, crop, outline, and minus back. So I'm not going to go ahead and explore each one of these. I'll let you play with these on your own and just sort of see what they do. As a matter of fact, a lot of these are going to have similar results to other ones. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab all 3 of these shapes here, and let's go ahead and hit this divide command right there at the beginning. Now, notice it leaves us with a group here, so I'll go ahead and ungroup that so we can pull it apart. And what we're left with here is everywhere there was a path, it's basically created almost like puzzle pieces that are the result of this effect. So we've got lots of new shapes here. So everywhere there was a path, it's basically cut these previous shapes into these new shapes. So let me just go ahead and undo this. All right. Let's go ahead and check out the Trim Pathfinder really quick. Let me go ahead and select these options again, and the Trim is the second one over here, and I'll go ahead and hit that. Again, we've got a group, so I'll ungroup that, and essentially what this one has done is it's trimmed out each shape, each overlapping shape from the ones underneath it. So you can see here we're left with a different result again. So we'll check out a couple more of these really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and check out the outline option next. It's the one right here. Now this one's going to be a little bit hard for you to see, but let me go ahead and activate this one here. And we'll just zoom in nice and tight on this. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this here, but we've actually been left with just the edges of these shapes. So we can actually ungroup this, and it may be a little easier for you to see if I jump into outline mode. I'm going to go ahead and do that with a Control-Y. There we go. Now we've got some black outlines for these edges. So let me just go ahead and pull these apart, and you can see here what we're left with. So we've got all these edges of our shapes. So that's what outline mode is going to do. Let me go ahead and undo that here. Switch back out of outline mode so we've got our shapes visible again. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and check out this last one here, which is the minus back Pathfinder. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit that. Well, it looks like I didn't undo quite far enough. Let me go ahead and undo that another step here. Make sure we've got all 3 of our shapes. There we go. Alright, so I'll go ahead and select all 3 of those and use this minus back Pathfinder option here. And you can see what has happened is the objects in the back have been subtracted from the frontmost object here, leaving only the results of that frontmost object. So what we're left with is this little orange shape right here in the front. So let me go ahead and undo that here. I want to show you one other thing. As you're playing with the Pathfinder in between lessons, let me go ahead and just show you one other thing that you might encounter. I'm going to go ahead and drag this triangle over this circle down here. Let me just shrink that triangle down with my modifier keys so that we're basically going to punch a hole in this circle with the triangle. Let's go ahead and do that using our minus front option here. Alright, so in doing this, you may notice a new type of shape that we haven't talked about yet. It's called a compound path. If you look up here in your control panel, you'll see that. We're actually going to talk about compound paths in the next lesson, so don't worry about that at all. Go ahead and in between lessons, experiment with some of these shape modes and pathfinders here in the Pathfinder panel. When you come back, we'll pick up where we're leaving off and we'll learn about compound paths.